Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rom, broadcasting to you from the Xtreme Studios in the Xtreme Palace here, just west of Orlando, Florida. I've got the young 20-something from Central Florida. I'm so excited tonight. Let me breathe and catch my breath here. I almost thought it was impossible that we'd be doing this again, but it's not. And you're here, Professor Pixel, the young 20-something that gives me a totally different take on whatever we're reviewing, which, of course, tonight is the original Season 1 Mission Impossible Episodes 3 and 4. Now, this is a pick that you actually selected when we went through our TV episodes here. So technically, instead of the Xtreme Movie Show, we like to call this Xtreme TV. But when we went over a few weeks ago the first two episodes, I was surprised because we've got a lot of an older crowd showing up for it that seems very loyal. And I was struck by the seriousness and how straight to the friggin' point the episodes were, and a little bit of no frills with it. And there's a lot of sections where there's not a lot of dialogue in it too. And I gotta sit there and say my initial take on these next episodes 3 and 4 is I think they're better. And I thought, wow, I'm trying to remember the most earliest serious show on TV that wasn't a Western or something like it that has this kind of intensity that shows you a lot of modern day things being put into it. And even though you and I have covered The Prisoner and a bunch of other things too, this one I think is starting to set the tone for what the show is going to become. Obviously, it was very popular and the score is incredible, but I really like these two episodes. The first one, of course, episode 3 is a standalone, and 4 will be part of a two-parter. But man, what's your take on these two? I've never seen them before. I liked them a lot.
I'd never seen them before either. I've seen none of this show before, except for, of course, last week I did see the first 2 episodes, and then now these 2. I do want to say that I wish I had been able to make it, but the ghost of George Jenkins possessed me and passed out. But no, what I loved about episode 1 was how it was shot. I have to say that I think that some of that still sticks through. I think episode 3 is exceptionally good. Because basically they're gaslighting this.
Yeah, gaslighting is a perfect word for it. I mean, you don't get a lot of gaslighting back in the 60s on...
It's positive gaslighting.
No, we didn't really see that in The Prisoner. We talked about a lot of freedom and libertarian type themes that are in there and, jazzy fistfights. But here I'm going, God, they're talking about basically how the United States government is involved in some shady crap. And this is a rogue agency that's to cover up their messes, basically, or do the stuff that's off the books. And it's not a joke, because you're right about the gaslighting. Obviously, you have Manchurian Candidate, the movie Gaslight, and a few other things, but for the most part, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I think how it's done is really, really good. Like, you are held into the moment, because half of your journey into the world of Mission Impossible is watching, obviously, them set up their mission as it's going forward, but you're also watching it from the villain's side. Like, you focus upon them. It's not like, I don't know how to describe it. Obviously, they're the bad guy, but with how the direction follows them, how the narrative shows itself, you don't necessarily follow it in a way that's typical for someone that's antagonistic.
Yeah, so this episode 3 from season 1 of the original Mission Impossible show, Ragosh, what it is you find out that there's this dude that's like a mass murderer type. He's a terrorist, whatever you want to call it. I'm trying to watch my verbiage here for the algo. And so the bottom line is they want to break him, because there's supposed to be this big thing going on. So what they're going to do is they're going to capture him. Then when he comes to, because they're going to knock him out, basically, and I like the way they did this, they're going to make it seem like it's in the future a little bit and build everything around it. And it's interesting because not only the overly elaborate schemes that we've gotten used to in the movies, you're like, holy crap, they did it in a TV show, right? I still want to talk a little bit about the beginning of it, because the score is fantastic, but I do like how what I'm seeing is, and I don't know how uniform it's going to be, because I know Peter Graves from the University of Minnesota, the Golden Gophers, he's not in the show yet, neither is Spock, right? So right now we're seeing a few different recurring characters, but like, are they only in there for like a little bit of an arc? Is it, things going to change in season 2? We'll find out. But I kind of pop a little bit at the opening because I like the guy sitting around, his lounge chair going through profiles of people and picking out ones that he wants to use. I don't know why I like dossiers and paper things to set down. It's much more enjoyable to watch when he looks at the photo and he's just doing a quick summation of, okay, I can use this person for this particular thing or not, because it's not the same group of people. There's a few extras in there I don't think he's pulled yet. It's only been 3-4 episodes, but I do like that. I think that's pretty neat. Why don't you take us through this beginning part and the whole setup for like the first act?
Well, I do want to say I think the whole dossier opening bit is good, especially in the following episode, because they have a special guest star, Mary Lynn, whatever her name is, and and he has a reaction, like a positive reaction, but a reaction that's clearly different. So yeah, it's fairly quick that they're able to get to work, because this foreign agent gets captured and they are just able to pop him straight into it. He wakes up, he's left alone for like a good portion of time. There are other people, and you can sometimes allegedly, but you can sometimes like you catch a glimpse of him in the distance, but they never interact with him for this good portion while he's trying to get attention.
And how did they kidnap him? Do you recall?
I don't. That was at the beginning of last week, man.
They sideswipe him in the car. It's pretty damn cool. I'm like, well, they're just going to run down people. And then they have this conversation in the ambulance about, well, hey, good job on hitting them. Basically, the injury's going to be consistent with whatever. And he's like, yeah. So it's like they basically keep him like doped up till he's able to come to or whatever. And this is a guy that's a terrorist, so you would think he'd be aware of some of these psychological tricks that, of course, you learn from the military, whatever military you happen to be a part of, whether it's European or American. And so again, it strikes me again how a show in the mid 60s here is really putting on display some of the atrocities that are just tools of the trade that you learn as you're a part of the military. And another thing that they do here that I think is similar to the first episodes we talked about is whoever the character is, they give him a good extended amount of time. In this case here, they show him coming to in the prison cell, trying to figure out a way out, what's going on, assessing the situation like a professional guy would in that situation. And there's no talking. There's just him doing stuff. It's all, I don't want to say action, but it's acting, and you don't have to talk.
Yeah.
I think it's incredible. And the guy that is on here, I've kind of recognized him before. He's been around a little bit. His name is Fritz Weaver. He's been on a lot of stuff. The guy did a great job, I thought, as a guest star. And I don't know how prominent he was at the time. More important stuff was going to be in front of him. But it gets to the point where basically, like I say, you're going to have Martin Landau's character basically deal with him in such a way where there's like a trial situation, because I hate trials on television and all that. I can't stand them. That was the worst part to me, but that's my own personal thing about it, to basically get him to get agitated enough where he's going to give off the information that they need. They can't just torture it out of him. That's why I'm like, holy crap, I guess this stuff really is pretty intense or whatever, because you see the guy like psychologically kind of break down with everybody coming in saying stuff to him, gaslighting even the woman that he sees across and thinks he hears being tortured or whatever it is. I was like, this is pretty dark.
No, it's not a positive thing, really, like, but it's no as we're going through this episode, that's what I was trying to allude to before. How it begins, how you're watching, and how they are reacting as such. I think it tells the story in a very special way, in the way it should be told. But it's still surprising. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I really am trying to wanted to talk about before we get into episode 4, because most of it is, like you said, you are watching as this man, he's trying to figure out the situation as he's being duped by the U.S. government, not officially, of course. Any mention will not be acknowledged, and they'll be disavowed by the U.S. government. But that's another story for another day. So should we go straight to the circus?
Not just yet, because I know that's the more funner of the 2 episodes. I'll just close with this. They managed to extract information from the guy, and what I thought was really neat is the very last couple lines where they talk about, well, something along the lines of, well, I'm disappointed you didn't get a chance to like kill him, basically, being loose with words. And he goes, and that he's going to get to walk away, and he's like, is that true, basically? Because what they do is they let him go, knowing that the higher ups that he's involved with in this plot are sitting there with a car to pick him up, which means he's going to his doom.
Yeah.
It's like I say, it's a dark. This is not. I wouldn't say this is family friendly. I'm not saying it's overly violent or anything, but again, I'm trying to put myself in position of what it's like to be, say, a young adult in the 20s watching this, going, "What the fuck's going on here?" I go from Rawhide or whatever to this, and it's like gaslighting and all these types of things. And then, of course, you've got wars that everybody was kind of starting to like not be a part of anymore, and you have the different counterculture thing starting to be a thing in the 70s, which is against that kind of stuff. But my goodness, very dark episode. I kind of thought they'd be a little kind of more, I don't know, like lighthearted or whimsical with what they're doing, kind of like what we seem to get from movies. And I'm realizing, no, not so far. But we do get a contrasting one, because we get the 4th episode where I know you seem pretty excited to talk about. So set us up for that one.
I mean, yeah, we kind of go straight to the carnival. We didn't get a chance to talk about it last week, but we get to this time about how he is able to get his missions. In this one, he goes to basically like a little theater, and he sits down, and the first part is they go ahead and start explaining his mission on screen. It's very nice. I like the look of it. Though the tape that he puts in, I have to get used to him being told to throw it away rather than
that's real, baby. That's old school. And doesn't get any more old school than that. 4-channel recorder, like if you're the Beatles, yeah.
But as he gets his mission, clergyman got arrested. He's important to his country. He's leading it. You need to get him out of jail, because he's being held currently by, I can't remember what government they're saying, but
or Blackistan.
Yes. So like I said, the dossier scene in this one is very, very solid. Of course, it's familiar faces, but with the new guest stars, and the ever-occurring appearance of Martin Landau. But Marion Mobile, she is gorgeous. She's lovely, and absolutely. I think our star thinks that too. Yes. So, but we get kind of a little more of him, because he has to go to her, and she's like, "Oh, I haven't seen you forever." "Oh, no, you don't." It's fun. It's fun, this beginning. But I'm not going to lie, I've kind of forgotten why the carnival itself was important to the act. Okay, because they basically have this one guy who is going to get arrested. He gets arrested. He's bringing in his quick tool that he's able to palm, so that way it doesn't get taken from him. And he uses that as a lockpick, so that way he can deal with the clergyman. Meanwhile, she's teaching the routine to another one of the agents, and it's all timed. They have Martin Landau as the strong man.
No. That's the other dude. Landau's the guy that gets arrested intentionally. So what it is, the setup is, it's hard to keep track of the characters sometimes, because it's a new show, and their names aren't used that much, right? And we have guest stars. But the idea is that this is this cardinal that they're trying to rescue. He's old, so he doesn't have the physical ability to escape on his own. So what they want to do is take Martin Lando's character, have him intentionally get arrested to go in there, bring some objects in there that will allow him to escape, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to need. And he only has a certain amount of time to do it. So the guise is that they're going to plant themselves as a part of the circus, right? Because then that way they can distract some of the people, because the circus is playing in a part of the town that is very, very close to the evil lair. You see what I'm saying? So it's basically like it's a reference to like the Berlin Wall, you know, to walling the city in half, where one side's free and one side isn't, right? I mean, that's pretty much it is. Communism versus non-communism, for those of you that don't understand English and want it more simply put. So that's what it is. And so the carnival gives them a chance to have somebody act like a mind reader, somebody do the strongman stuff. The Marianne Mobley in here, the dark haired in here, gorgeous, beautiful. You're absolutely right. She was Miss America in the late 50s, and I believe it. And she, you know, does the trapeze thing or whatever like that as a distraction. And then there's a scene in here I want to bring up too, because I thought it really showed the level of detail that they have with the way they're telling a story, because you mentioned that a lot about the way they show it, and I think this is important. A lot of people go back to old school ways of showing, you know, that a man or woman are interested in each other, nonverbal communication, what's happening. And there was a scene in the last episode 3 between the two guys talking before he was released that was interesting. Didn't really get into specifics, but in here, with the blonde beauty that's a part of the IMF team, when she's working over the guard that's on his duty, going back and forth or whatever, and he's kind of smitten with her because she's gorgeous or whatever, and she's like a mind reader, and they have this little verbal thing, and she's just staring at him, smiling, not blinking, but then she looks down, and then, you know, he's like, well, I guess you don't know to read my mind. She goes, no, I don't think I have to, or whatever. And then she stands up, puts a cigarette out, and of course the camera shows her from her feet going up her legs and her body in this beautiful red dress. Classy, not slutty. And she goes, she smiles a little bit, turns and walks away. And then she does the stop where she stops, turns around, looks at the guy, looks down, smiles, the come hither look, as they call it. And they weren't afraid to show that, to imply that there's this really strong sexual tension between the two. And she's using it to her advantage to rope-a-dope this dude, which, you know, of course happens in it, because everything works in these friggin' shows so far. And the Martin Landau character, you know, there's a great way of showing him when he gets put in there and he has to put his objects down. And again, they had a metal detector and something went off, and he's like, oh, sorry. And you see him bump the guy and put the piece of metal thing that he's going to use to help break out in it. But Martin Landau, just to me, stands out in here. He was in North by Northwest with Alfred Hitchcock as the silent guy opposite Mason. Both of them creeped the hell out of me out. Hitchcock did a good job of having both of them in here. And I'm telling you right now, what I'm seeing out of this episode is, even though I love the portfolio selection at the beginning and whatever convoluted thing they're doing, we don't really care about, at least I don't. But to see Martin Landau get to do different things, whether it's different accents, you know, a little bit of pickpocketing, a little bit of this and that, I'm like, this is really cool. I'm getting my teeth wet, because right now everybody seems a little quiet, a little stiff. And the women seem like they know what the roles are, which is to be a woman that can seduce you, basically. Martin Landau's really starting to rock it a little bit, I think, here in this episode, because it is a two-parter. We don't get a conclusion for it, but the fact that he gets in there and gets to the cell where the old guy's at and tries to help him break out, this had more of what I would call your classic Mission Impossible feel of breaking in or breaking out, which we've seen in some of the movies. So to give it a long-winded explanation, that's the reason why it was so crucial, because of the logistics of performing this, that they were in using that carnival that circus as a cover for where they're at in the town. There was even that conversation with the main bad dude in there about, well, why don't you use the middle of the town? And he goes, oh, our trapeze artist works without a net, so a real big breeze in there, it's over. And he's like, and he's staring at him. So it's this kind of bullshitting back and forth, and, you know, can you believe somebody? That's like a confidence play. And so if you're just kind of not really into the nonverbal parts, you miss, I think, a lot of what I think so far the appeal of these 4 episodes has been, is the strong acting that's going on without any of the talking. At least that was my take on this episode.
Yep. And I will say, I understand that it's just easier this way, but it's so painfully obvious that the 3 times she goes up on the trapeze, it's the same footage reused. Because
Yeah.
just at the beginning, and then every time after that, it's the same footage that they clip into the opening, so it like sticks out in your mind. Yeah, no, I guess something about their facial structure made me think that it was swapped around, because he's been in every episode thus far, but not as the same characters always.
Yeah.
He's still Lindo. I honestly thought she was going to get shot down at the last part for
That
some
would be
reason.
gruesome.
I thought, yeah, something was going to happen, but no, I don't think again, it's not a full conclusion, but the breath, the to be continued, is a little lackluster. I feel like he sets up his spot so that way, oh well, I won't get caught.
Yeah.
But he tries to go back in and he can't. She's fine. It's all right. It's all right. The episode's good, but it's not finished, so we don't know how the story is. We don't know its end, and until we got that, we don't have a lot to work with of our judgments.
Yeah, the strongman, I forget the dude's name. He seems a bit of a stiff acting wise to me, but he does look jacked legitimately. And he's doing what's called an overhead press. He's got a bulldog grip on it for you gym bros out there. Obviously, it's fake weights or whatever because it looks like it should be a little over 200. Not that people can't do that, but there's just no strain on his body. But I thought that reminded me of on other conversations we've had here on Extreme Movie Show or over on y'all's channel on the Geeky Puppet Show when we've talked about Marvel and DC, how people don't look the part unless they're just a few of the guys that put on a lot of weight, like in The Witch or whatever. A lot of guys are small, so they don't look the role, and it doesn't lead you to believe that it's possible, regardless of the content or the character. And I thought at least Mission Impossible did that. You have a very beautiful, elegant woman, the woman on the trapeze artist. She looks athletic. And her skin doesn't look like they just threw a bronzer on her or she just put on 10 pounds. She looks like she has it very fluid in the motion. And it's not, even though it's the same footage kind of reused to your point there, and maybe they added a second or two here and there or edited it. Yeah, it is. You can tell by looking at it because we're so used to seeing it. But I thought it aged fairly well for it. But, the other thing, too, I got to mention just in general about the episodes is that, and you saw this more with the 60s shows going into the 70s, I think, when it really started to change. A lot of people are just wearing suits everywhere you go. And I'm like, this is kind of cool. It's like, is this fake? It's like, no, it's not. Obviously, it's a background and all that, too. But just the way society was then. Now it's like, you're important because you're wearing a suit. Now, if you wear a suit, everyone thinks you're James Bond, even if it's a cheapy $200 piece of crap one or whatever, because nobody wears them. But you can see where each person's role is set up. And it all has to do with the nature of human beings and how they respond in situations is how they're planning the heist. It's not necessarily what I would call an over-reliance on gadgets, even though it's improbable and everything has to work. But sometimes, the Bond films, got away from this template when, especially in the Roger Moore era, with the over-reliance on gadgets rather than a small, simple tool of the trade that, the neat part wasn't the tool itself, it was how it was used. And so that's one thing about this episode I thought really stood out, in addition to Mark Landau just being great. But yeah, to be continued, you're absolutely right. It's kind of like, yeah, okay, fine, I guess. But, not a lot of two-parters necessarily in TV back in the day.
Yeah, no. I think that this was a good choice. Not to toot my own horn. We're 4 episodes in out of what, 20 something? 20?
20-ish.
We'll find out. 20-ish. Yeah. And yeah, I think they've all been fairly solid. I really wish I had, like I said, had made it for the last one, because there's something about that pilot, man. Like the whole vault scene and the colors and all that, the way it's shot, just the intensity of it, and the intensity follows through. I mean, it's in these 2 episodes to varying degrees, 3 a little more, but it's really a solid show thus far. I mean, you're taking what, a 48-minute episode, and you're able to fully tell a satisfying story. You know, when we were reviewing The Prisoner, we would have episodes that were really astonishing. Oh my gosh, this was so great because of X, Y, and Z. But we got disenchanted further on we went because nothing really mattered. But to this, you go in knowing that each individual episode is its own mission. It's not one big overarching mission, and it's not supposed to have any effect on the next one, unless somebody dies and they bring them back.
Right.
Which hasn't Martin Landau already done?
Well,
Maybe. He was the villain.
More about his involvement in the show itself, because looking him up a little bit, I came across some stuff because I was curious about Peter Graves from the University of Minnesota not being in it yet, and so that will come later. And obviously, the show did very well because it lasted several seasons, so can't fault that. But yeah, I'm surprised that a show could be that this deep with an adult level without necessarily an over-reliance on violence or quick cuts or this stupid stuff that's distracting to a short attention span conditioned audience that currently exists generally today. So yeah, it's definitely surprised me a little bit. I thought it was going to be a bit of a simpleton kind of exercise watching it, and boy, am I wrong so far. But when we go to do episodes 5 and 6, we'll definitely see if this trend continues. Any other final thoughts?
This is not a Dan Curtis production.
Nor Quinway. Geeky Puppet Show saying there is something about the pilot. Was he dreaming? It's kind of quick-witted on your feet. You too might be a possible selection here for the assignment, should you choose to accept that. I'm looking forward to more mystery talks and secret phrases to get the next stuff or wherever it's going to be. I want to see a phone booth. I want to see a public library. I want to see like a shopping mall. I want to see all that stuff, but we'll see how it goes. All right, guys, there you have it. Mission Impossible Season 1, Episodes 3 and 4. We'll be discussing 5 and 6 here shortly on the Xtreme Movie Show. Until then, have a good night. And as always, stay extreme.